The space station hummed with activity as beings from a dozen worlds moved through its curved corridors. Susan Miller walked with purpose, her steps quick but unhurried. The human diplomat had become something of a celebrity after her victory in the duel against Krazak, the Zelnar champion. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful day, and the diplomatic talks between humans and the Zelnar Empire had progressed rapidly. News of the duel had spread across the galactic community faster than lightspeed communications. Species that had previously ignored humanity now sent representatives to establish relations. The station, originally built as a neutral meeting ground, had become the center of interstellar politics. Susan entered the observation deck, now returned to its original purpose after serving as the dueling arena. The reinforced windows revealed the stunning vista of stars and nearby planets. She came here often to think away from the constant meetings and negotiations. "Commander." Miller, a voice called from behind her. Susan turned to see Lily Chen, the mission xenobiologist, approaching with a datapad in hand. "The Zelnar delegation has requested another meeting. They say it's urgent." Susan nodded. This wasn't surprising. The peace agreement was nearly complete, but several key points remained unresolved, including access rights to a mineral-rich asteroid belt between their territories. When she arrived at the conference room, Susan found not the usual Zelnar diplomats, but Krazak herself. The warrior stood tall, her blue scales gleaming under the lights. She wore formal armor rather than battle gear. A sign of respect, Krazak bowed slightly. "I bring news from my homeworld," she said. "Our long-range sensors have detected an unknown fleet approaching the borders of both our territories. They match no known species and have not responded to communication attempts." Susan felt a chill. The galaxy was vast and largely unexplored. New species were discovered regularly, but most were peaceful or primitive. An advanced fleet that refused communication was troubling. "Have they shown hostile intent?" she asked. Krazak nodded. "They destroyed one of our patrol vessels without warning. When our reinforcements arrived, they retreated, but our analysts believe they were testing our capabilities, not truly fleeing. The implications were clear. Both human and Zelnar territories could be at risk." Susan accessed her communication device. "Kate, I need you to contact Earth Command immediately. Tell them we may have a first contact situation, potentially hostile." Within hours, the conference room had been converted into a joint command center. Representatives from both species worked side by side, analyzing the limited data available. The unknown vessels were unlike anything in either species' records. Their energy signatures were off the charts, suggesting technology far beyond current understanding. Admiral Grace Foster of the Earth Defense Force joined via secure transmission, her hologram flickering slightly. "What do we know about their capabilities?" Krazak manipulated the holographic display, showing the encounter with the Zelnar patrol. "They used some form of energy weapon that bypassed our shields completely. The patrol ship was destroyed before it could even report what hit it." Susan studied the footage, noting the precision of the attack. These weren't warning shots. They were methodically testing for weaknesses. The Zelnar ambassador entered the room, his normally imperious demeanor replaced by urgency. "The High Council has authorized me to propose a temporary military alliance with humanity," he announced. "We face a common threat, and our recent conflict has proven that humans possess unique tactical insights." The human delegation exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. The Zelnar were known for their reluctance to form alliances, considering most species beneath them. Susan spoke carefully. "We would need to establish clear command protocols and information sharing agreements." The details were hammered out over the next 12 hours. Earth Command agreed to send their newest vessels to rendezvous with the Zelnar fleet at the edge of the disputed territory. The combined force would present a united front against the unknown threat. As the meeting concluded, Krazak approached Susan privately. "During our duel, I learned that appearances can be deceiving," she said. "Your species looks soft and weak, but you possess inner strength and cunning. I believe this alliance may be necessary for both our people's survival." Susan nodded. "The greatest strength often comes from diversity. Different perspectives, different approaches to problems. The unknown species clearly has technological advantages, but technology isn't everything. That Night. Susan could not sleep. She stood at the window of her quarters watching distant stars. Perhaps one of them was the home world of this new threat. What did they want? Why come in force, instead of attempting peaceful contact? A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Kate Adams appeared on the screen. I analyzed the attack pattern against the Zelnar ship. She said there's something odd about it. The precision suggests advanced targeting systems, but the pattern itself feels almost familiar. Susan leaned forward. What do you mean? Kate highlighted sections of the footage. It's like they were following a textbook military strategy, one that we might use. It's methodical, systematic, but not particularly creative. A disturbing thought formed in Susan's mind. Could they have been studying us? Watching our conflicts, learning our tactics? The next morning brought news that chilled everyone on the station. The unknown fleet had changed course. They were now heading directly toward the space station itself. Estimated arrival 36 hours. The evacuation began immediately. Diplomatic personnel and non-essential staff boarded transport vessels bound for safe territories. Susan and a skeleton crew remained behind along with Krazak and several Zelnar warriors. Krazak found Susan in the command center reviewing defense options. Our combined fleet will not arrive in time. She said we must prepare for first contact here on the station. Susan looked up at the warrior, meeting her 4 yellow eyes. Without knowing their intentions, were flying blind. The Zelnar nodded her tail, swishing slowly. We know one thing: they are watching. They chose to come here after your victory in our duel. Perhaps they see you as I do now, a worthy opponent. The command center of the space station had transformed into a hive of frantic activity. Screens displayed the approaching fleet of unknown vessels moving with unnerving precision. Susan Miller stood at the central console, her face illuminated by the holographic display showing the enemy's advance. How many ships? Asked Susan, her voice steady despite the tension. 23 confirmed, responded Kate, who had refused to evacuate with the others. The largest appears to be 3 times the size of our biggest battleship. Susan nodded, absorbing the information. The combined human Zelnar defense fleet was still 18 hours away. The station had modest defenses, but nothing that could stand against such a force. Their only real option was to attempt communication and hope for the best. Krazak entered the command center, followed by 2 other Zelnar warriors. The blue-scaled alien moved with purpose, her tail held high in a posture Susan had learned indicated determination. We have activated all defensive systems, she reported, though I doubt they will provide much protection against such advanced technology. The station shuddered slightly as the defensive shields powered up. The lights dimmed momentarily, then stabilized. Emergency generators online, announced the automated system. Susan turned to the communication specialist, Tanya Rogers, a young woman with steady hands despite the circumstances. Prepare all first contact protocols, she ordered. Send greetings in every known language, including mathematical sequences. Tanya nodded, her fingers flying across the control panel. Transmission ready, she confirmed. Send, Susan said. The message, containing peaceful greetings and basic identification information, streamed out toward the approaching vessels. Everyone in the command center held their breath, watching the sensor readings. No response, said Tanya after several minutes. Try again, Susan ordered. Include visuals of different species cooperating on the station. Show them we're a diplomatic outpost. The second message went out. More minutes passed. The unknown fleet continued its approach without slowing or changing formation. They received our messages, said Kate. They just aren't answering. Krazak moved to stand beside Susan, her tall form casting a shadow over the human. This silence is deliberate, she said. They study us even now. Susan felt a chill along her spine, remembering her earlier conversation with Kate about the methodical nature of the attack on the Zelnar patrol ship. The enemy was learning, assessing before committing to action. New sensor readings, Kate announced suddenly. They've deployed smaller vessels. 6 craft approaching the station. Estimated arrival 12 minutes. Susan straightened her uniform, putting aside fear in favor of focus. Krazak, prepare your warriors for possible boarding. We don't know their intentions, but we should be ready. The Zelnar nodded, respect evident in her posture. Human Susan Miller, she said, formally using the full name as was Zelnar custom, for addressing respected individuals. It has been an honor to fight both against you and alongside you. The sentiment surprised Susan, but she nodded in acknowledgement. The feeling is mutual. Krazak of the Zelnar. The station sensors tracked the 6 smaller vessels as they approached. Each was roughly the size of a shuttlecraft large enough to carry perhaps a dozen beings. The station shuddered again as the automatic defense systems targeted the incoming ships. The laser batteries fired brief pulses of energy. No effect, reported Tanya. Their hulls absorbed the energy without damage. Susan had expected as much. They're attempting to dock at Access Port 7. Kate announced Krazak and her warriors headed toward the access port while Susan organized the remaining human crew. Most were scientists and diplomats, not soldiers, but each had received basic defense training. They armed themselves with the limited weapons available. Standard-issue energy pistols designed more for personal protection than warfare. Susan established a secure communication link to Admiral Foster. "We have first contact situation in progress." She reported unknown vessels attempting to board the station defense fleet ETAS till 14 hours. The Admiral responded grimly. "Hold them off if possible, but your primary mission is information gathering. We need to know what we're dealing with." Susan acknowledged the order, then joined Krazak and the others. Near Access Port 7, the circular airlock door remained sealed, but sensors indicated the alien vessel had successfully attached itself to the outer hull. The station AI spoke through the communication system. "Warning, unauthorized override of airlock controls detected. Access Port 7 will open in 30 seconds. Everyone took defensive positions behind barriers and support columns, weapons ready." Susan positioned herself beside Krazak, the human and alien united in purpose. Despite their differences, the airlock hissed and began to cycle. The inner door slowly rotated, revealing the dark space beyond. Susan held her breath, finger poised on the trigger of her weapon. The door completed its cycle, revealing the interior of the alien craft. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the light of the station corridor. Susan stared in disbelief. The being before them was humanoid, with features that appeared to be a strange blend of human and Zelnar characteristics. It stood nearly as tall as Krazak, with pale skin that held a subtle blue undertone. Its eyes were larger than human norm, golden in color with vertical pupils. It wore what appeared to be a form-fitting armor that shifted colors subtly as it moved. Behind the first being came others, similar in appearance but with subtle variations. Some had more pronounced scales along their necks, others displayed more human-like features. All moved with fluid grace that seemed both familiar and alien. The lead figure stopped several meters from the defensive position. It raised empty hands in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. Then it spoke in perfect, unaccented English. "Greetings, ancestors. We have come a long way to find you." The words echoed in the suddenly silent corridor. Susan exchanged a glance with Krazak, seeing her own confusion mirrored in the alien warriors. "Four eyes, ancestors." Susan repeated, her weapon still raised, but her finger eased slightly off the trigger. "Who are you?" The being smiled, a gesture that seemed practiced rather than natural. "We are the nexus born of the alliance between humans and Zelnar. We come from what you would call the future, though to us, it is simply home." Susan felt her world tilt on its axis. The implications were staggering. Time travel was theoretical, at best considered impossible by most scientists. But the evidence stood before them. Beings that carried characteristics of both species. Krazak stepped forward, her posture indicating skepticism. "You claim to be descendants of both our peoples, yet you attack a Zelnar vessel without provocation. These are not the actions of allies." The lead being's expression became solemn. "We did not attack your patrol ship. We attempted communication, but our technology interfered with your systems, causing a cascade failure. We regret the loss of life. It was not our intention." Before either Susan or Krazak could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. "Alert, hostile vessels detected," announced the AI. 20 ships approaching From Sector 47, Kate's voice came through Susan's communicator. They don't match the unknown fleet. They appear to be. Another group has entered the system. Their energy signatures are completely different. The lead nexus being turned its golden eyes toward Susan. Our arrival has accelerated the timeline, he said. The Voidborn have found you earlier than in our history. Now you understand why we came. We must prepare you for what is to come. The command center buzzed with tension as the screens displayed two separate fleets approaching the station. Susan stood between Krazak and the Nexus leader, who had introduced himself as Valar. The strange hybrid being moved with a fluid grace that seemed both familiar and alien. The new arrivals, the ones Valar called the Voidborn, had formed a blockade position between the station and the original Nexus fleet. Their ships were unlike anything Susan had seen before. Sleek, black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons or propulsion systems could be detected. They hunt across time and space, said Valar, his golden eyes fixed on the display. In our history, they found Earth 50 years from now, after the human-Zelnar alliance was already strong. In this timeline, they found you earlier. The consequences could be devastating. Susan studied the being claiming to be from the future. His features held elements of both species, yet were harmonized, in a way that spoke of generations of genetic blending. If what he claimed was true, how do we know you're telling the truth? Asked Krazak, her tail swishing in agitation. You appear without warning with technology far beyond our understanding and speak of time travel and future threats. This could be an elaborate deception. Valar reached into his armor and removed a small device. It projected a hologram showing what appeared to be Earth, but changed. Massive cities stretched across continents with architecture blending human and Zelnar styles. Ships moved through the atmosphere, some clearly of Zelnar design, others human, and many that seemed to be a fusion of both. This is Earth 300 years from now, he said. Home to both our peoples, the result of the alliance that begins here. Now look. The hologram shifted, showing another planet. Its surface blackened cities in ruins. No sign of life remained. This was Zelnar Prime after the Voidborn attack, said Valar, his voice solemn. Earth would have faced the same fate had we not developed the temporal technology to send warning. Krazak stepped forward, studying the images of her devastated homeworld. Such technology could be falsified, she said, though doubt had crept into her voice. Susan intervened. We don't have time to debate. This she gestured to the screen showing the approaching Voidborn. Fleet is real and immediate, Valar. What can you tell us about their capabilities? How do we fight them? The Nexus leader nodded, appreciating her practicality. The Voidborn are not like us. They do not exist fully in our reality. They phase between dimensions, which makes them difficult to target with conventional weapons. That explains why they absorbed our defensive fire without damage, said Kate, who had been listening intently. Yes, confirmed Valar, our ancestors. You developed phase-shifted weapons capable of affecting them, but that technology is still decades away in your timeline. Susan exchanged glances with Krazak, both coming to the same conclusion. We need time, she said. As if in response to her words, the station's communication system activated. An incoming transmission appeared on the main screen. A figure appeared shrouded in darkness. Its features were impossible to discern, but its voice resonated through the command center, a sound like stone grinding against metal. Surrender the temporal anomalies, it demanded. We sense their presence. They have violated the laws of causality and must be eliminated. Susan stepped forward, addressing the screen. I am Commander Susan Miller of the Earth Defense Force. This station is a diplomatic outpost. We request peaceful dialogue. The dark figure seemed to shift its attention toward her. Human, your species is young, ignorant of the greater forces at work. The beings you harbor have broken fundamental laws of existence. They and all who shelter them must be purged. The transmission ended abruptly. Kate looked up from her console. Their fleet is powering weapons. Estimated firing, Range in 3 minutes. Valor turned to Susan. They will not negotiate with you. They consider your alliance with the Zelnar and eventually with us to be a threat to their dominance of this sector of the galaxy. In our timeline, your combined forces eventually drove them back. They seek to prevent that by eliminating you before you grow strong. Susan made a quick decision. Evacuate all remaining personnel to the Nexus ship, she ordered. Kate, send all our data on the Voidborn to both Earth Command and the Zelnar High Council. If we can't stop them here, they need to be prepared. Krazak stepped closer. Our warriors will provide cover for the evacuation, she said. Then turning to Valor, your vessels can escape. Valor nodded. Our temporal drives allow us to phase shift similar to the Voidborn. We can evade them long enough to reach safety as the evacuation began. Susan, Krazak, and Valar moved through the station, ensuring all personnel were accounted for. The Nexus beings worked alongside humans, and Zelnar with practiced efficiency, suggesting they were indeed familiar with both species. The station shuddered violently as the first Voidborn attack hit the outer shields. The defensive systems blared warnings. The main power fluctuated lights, dimming throughout the corridors. Susan steadied herself against a wall as another hit rocked the station shield integrity. At 40%, announced the AI voice. Estimated failure in 6 minutes. They reached the docking bay where the Nexus vessels waited. The remaining station crew, both human and Zelnar, hurried aboard. Krazak directed her warriors, ensuring orderly boarding, despite the continued attacks. Susan paused at the entrance to the lead Nexus ship, looking back at the station that had been her home for months. Another violent shudder ran through the structure as the Voidborn weapons found their mark. Come, urged Valar. We must leave now. Susan nodded and stepped aboard. The interior of the Nexus vessel was surprisingly organic in design, with flowing contours and surfaces that seemed to respond to touch. The ship hummed with energy as the engines powered up from the bridge. Susan watched as the Nexus fleet maneuvered away from the station. The Voidborn vessels gave chase, their black hulls seeming to distort the space around them. Initiating phase shift, announced a Nexus crew member. The view screen showed space itself seeming to fold around them. Colors shifted beyond normal visual spectrum. Susan felt a strange sensation, like her body was both present and not present simultaneously. She glanced at Krazak, who appeared equally disoriented. The Zelnar warrior gripped a support rail, her scales shimmering with an unusual iridescence. The sensation passed as quickly as it had come. We have successfully shifted, said Valar. The Voidborn cannot track us in this state. Where are we going? Asked Susan. To rendezvous with your defense fleet, replied Valar. They must be warned. The Voidborn will not stop with the station. They will target Earth and Zelnar Prime next. Susan moved to a communication console. Can we contact them from here? Valar nodded, placing his hand on the organic-looking interface. The console responded to his touch, forming a connection. Our technology is compatible with yours, though. Significantly advanced as they established communication with the approaching human Zelnar fleet. Susan studied the Nexus crew. Their movements, their interactions, all supported their claim of being descendants of both species. They worked with a unity that spoke of generations of cooperation. Admiral Foster appeared on the screen, her expression grave as Susan explained the situation. Temporal visitors claiming to be from our future and an enemy force called the Voidborn. The Admiral listened without interruption. Can these Nexus beings provide tactical data? Asked the Admiral. Finally, Susan turned to Valar, who stepped forward. I can transfer our historical records of the First Voidborn War, he said, including the early prototype designs for phase shift weapons. They will not be as effective as our current technology, but they may give you a fighting chance. As Valar worked with the communication system, Susan moved to stand beside Krazak. The Zelnar warrior had been unusually quiet. Do you believe them now? Asked Susan quietly. Krazak turned, her 4 eyes studying Susan thoughtfully. The evidence suggests truth, she admitted, but I am troubled by implications. Future knowledge can be as dangerous as it is valuable. Susan nodded, understanding the warrior's concern. Then she noticed something through the view screen. The stars seemed wrong, somehow distorted. Velar noticed her attention. An effect of phase shifting, he explained. We exist partially outside, normal space-time. While here we can travel vast distances almost instantly, it is how we journeyed back to your time. Susan felt a chill. The technology was centuries beyond current understanding, yet if the Voidborn threat was real, they would need every advantage. They were rushing toward a war none of them had anticipated with an enemy they barely understood. Earth grew larger on the view screen as the combined fleet approached. The Voidborn had already entered the solar system, their vessels moving with eerie precision through the asteroid belt. They showed no interest in communication, maintaining radio. Silence as they advanced toward the blue planet. Susan stood on the bridge of the Nexus flagship, now serving as the command center for the joint fleet. Beside her, Krazak studied tactical displays with Admiral Foster, and Commander Grazak Velar manipulated the holographic controls showing the planned defensive formation. We must intercept them before they reach Earth's moon, said Admiral Foster. Once they achieve lunar orbit, their weapons will be in range of the surface. The fleet will form 3 defensive layers, explained Velar. The outer layer consists of your fastest ships equipped with the phase shift weapons. Their goal is to slow the Voidborn advance. The middle layer provides concentrated firepower, while the inner layer protects Earth directly. Grazak clicked his mandibles, a Zelnar sign of approval. The strategy is sound, he said. The Zelnar cruisers will take position in the middle layer. Our shields are stronger, though our maneuverability is limited. Susan studied the formation, noticing a gap. I see a potential weakness here, she said, pointing to the display. The Voidborn could bypass our main forces if they approach from this vector. Velar nodded approvingly. You see it as they will, he said. We will position 3 Nexus vessels to cover. That approach, our sensors can detect their phase shifts, preventing surprises. The fleet moved into position. Susan joined Kate in the laboratory where final modifications were being made to the weapon systems. Kate looked up from her work, her face showing both exhaustion and determination. The phase shift modulators are operating at 70% efficiency, she reported. The Nexus engineers believe that will be enough to damage the Voidborn ships, though not as effectively as they might. Hope Susan squeezed her friend's shoulder. 70% will have to do. We work with what we have. An alert sounded throughout the ship. Admiral Foster's voice came through the communication system. Battle stations, the Voidborn fleet has increased speed. They will reach our position in 30 minutes. Susan hurried back to the bridge. The view screen showed the approaching Voidborn vessels. Their black hulls seemed to absorb the light from the distant sun, creating an unsettling void against the backdrop of stars. The fleet was arranged in a spear formation, clearly designed to punch through the defensive layers. Velar stood at the command station, his expression solemn. This is not just a battle for Earth, he said. This is a battle for the timeline itself. If Earth falls, humanity will be crippled. The alliance between your peoples will never form. The future I come from will cease to exist. Krazak stepped forward, her tail held high in the Zelnar battle posture. Then we shall ensure your future comes to pass, warrior to warrior. I give my word. The minutes ticked by in tense silence. The first layer of defense vessels moved into intercept position, phase shift weapons charged and ready. The Voidborn showed no sign of slowing there, formation maintaining perfect alignment. First contact in 10 seconds, announced the tactical officer. Susan held her breath as the leading edge of the human Zelnar fleet engaged the Voidborn. The modified weapons fired streams of energy that shimmered, with an unusual distortion effect. Where standard weapons had passed harmlessly through the Voidborn ships, these new beams connected. Direct hits confirmed. The tactical display showed damage to several Voidborn vessels. Encouraged by this success, the fleet pressed the attack. The Voidborn responded with devastating efficiency. Their weapons fired streams of dark energy that seemed to fold space itself. The human ship, Vigilant, disappeared in a flash of light, not destroyed but removed as if it had never existed. They are creating localized temporal rifts, explained. Velar ships caught in the effect are displaced in time. The battle expanded as more ships engaged. The Zelnar cruisers moved forward, their powerful shields absorbing the initial Voidborn attacks while their modified weapons returned fire. Explosions bloomed in the vacuum of space as Voidborn vessels sustained damage. Yet for each enemy ship disabled, 2 allied vessels were lost. Despite the modified weapons, the battle was not going well. The Voidborn adapted quickly, altering their phase frequency to reduce the effectiveness of the human Zelnar attacks. Their formation shifted, flowing like water around obstacles rather than breaking. Admiral Foster called for a change. In tactics, pull back the outer layer, she ordered. Concentrate our forces at the lunar orbit. We make our stand there. Susan analyzed the tactical display, noticing a pattern in the Voidborn movements. They aren't acting like individual ships, she realized. They move as a single organism. Their attacks are precisely coordinated. Krazak noticed it too. Perhaps they share a collective consciousness, she suggested, or are controlled from a central node. Beller studied the display, his eyes widening. The command vessel, he said, pointing to a larger ship near the center of the Voidborn formation. In our history, we discovered their fleet operations are directed by a nexus mind, a central intelligence that coordinates all ships. That must be it. Susan turned to Admiral Foster. If we can disable that ship, we might disrupt their entire fleet. The Admiral nodded but looked skeptical. How do we reach it? It's protected by their entire formation. Wheeler stepped forward. The Nexus flagship can phase shift on a frequency they cannot detect. We could approach unnoticed and deliver a concentrated attack. It would be a one-way mission, said Commander Grazakt. The moment you attack, your position would be revealed. Wheeler nodded, accepting this one ship to save 2 civilizations. The equation is simple. Susan felt a surge of admiration for the future descendant of their peoples. She turned to Krazak, seeing the same respect in the warrior's eyes. Admiral Foster gave the order. The combined fleet would create a diversion, drawing the Voidborn attention, while the Nexus flagship performed its phase shift to approach the command vessel. Susan, Krazak, and a small strike team would remain aboard, while most of the crew transferred to other vessels as preparations were made. Susan found a quiet moment to speak with Valar. If you succeed, your timeline may be preserved, she said. But you and your crew will still be trapped here centuries before your birth. Valar smiled, a gesture that blended human expression with subtle Zelnar mandible movements. We understood the risks when we embarked on this mission, he said. Perhaps we will find a way to return, perhaps not. Either way, we have served our purpose. The alliance between humans and Zelnar will continue. The battle resumed. With renewed intensity, the combined fleet pressed forward, creating the illusion of an all-out assault. The Voidborn responded, concentrating their forces against this apparent threat. Now, whispered Valar. The Nexus flagship shimmered and seemed to fade from normal space. The sensation was disorienting as the ship shifted into a different phase state. Susan felt as if her body was becoming less substantial, her vision blurring at the edges. Beside her, Krazak shuddered, her scales rippling with unusual patterns. The ship moved silently through the Voidborn fleet, passing directly through enemy vessels without detection. The tactical display showed their position approaching the massive command ship at the center of the formation, ready phase. Weapons ordered Wheeler target their central processing node. The Nexus ship dropped back into normal phase directly above the Voidborn command vessel. The weapons fired immediately, sending concentrated phase-shifted energy into the heart of the enemy ship. The effect was immediate. The command vessel shuddered as energy cascaded across its hull. Secondary explosions bloomed from within its structure. The surrounding Voidborn ships faltered their perfect formation, breaking apart as the controlling intelligence was disrupted. Finish it, ordered Admiral Foster. The combined fleet surged forward, striking the now disorganized Voidborn ships. The battle turned quickly as the enemy vessels lost their coordinated advantage. Some began to retreat while others fought on, but without their previous efficiency. Susan watched from the Nexus ship as the Voidborn fleet scattered. Earth was safe. The Alliance had held in the aftermath as the fleet regrouped around Earth. Susan found Krazak on the observation deck. They stood side by side watching as the planet turned below them. "So begins our alliance," said Krazak. "Formally, this day will be remembered in Zelnar history." Susan smiled. "Today we fought as allies. Tomorrow we build as partners." Valar joined them, his expression serene. "This is how it begins," he said. "In my time, this battle is remembered as the Foundation Day, when two peoples chose to stand together against the darkness. This is the first page in a new history." Krazak turned to the hybrid being. "You and your people are welcome among the Zelnar," she said formally. "Though you come from a future we have not yet built, you are kin." Susan nodded her agreement. Earth would extend the same welcome. The Nexus represented a future worth building toward as reports came in from the fleet. Susan realized something important had changed. The human and Zelnar crews were working together, sharing resources and medical facilities without the previous tensions. Despite the losses, perhaps because of them, a new understanding had formed. Admiral Foster entered the observation deck accompanied by Commander Krazak. "The Zelnar High Council has proposed a permanent alliance," she announced. "The Earth Defense Force has accepted." Susan looked at Krazak, seeing her own thoughts reflected in the warrior's eyes. They had begun this journey as opponents facing each other in a ritual duel. Now they stood as allies with a glimpse of a shared future. The Nexus vessel emerged from phase shift, near the edge of the disputed territory where the combined human-Zelnar fleet waited. The view screen showed dozens of ships arranged in defensive formation. Zelnar cruisers with their distinctive spiral designs alongside the more angular human vessels. It was an impressive sight. Yet Susan knew it would not be enough against the void-born threat. Admiral Foster had ordered the fleet to hold position and await their arrival. A small delegation, including the Admiral, would transfer to the Nexus flagship for an emergency war council. Susan prepared for the meeting. Organizing the information they had gathered about the Voidborn, Krazak entered the preparation room, her warrior armor now replaced with formal diplomatic attire. "The Zelnar fleet commander will join us," she said. "He is skeptical of these time travelers, but the destruction of our patrol ship in the station has convinced him the threat is real." Susan nodded. "We have little choice but to trust Valar and his people. If even half of what they claim is true." The meeting chamber aboard the Nexus vessel reflected the hybrid nature of its creators. The circular room featured both the practical efficiency humans preferred and the artistic flourishes Zelnar valued. Valar had arranged historical records and tactical data for presentation. Admiral Grace Foster arrived first, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. She studied the chamber, with sharp eyes taking in every detail. Commander Miller. She greeted Susan formally, then turned to Krazak warrior. "Krazak, I understand we have you both to thank for this alliance." Before either could respond, the Zelnar fleet commander entered. Krazak, an imposing figure even by Zelnar standards. His scales were deep purple, indicating advanced age and high rank. His tail bore ceremonial rings, marking military achievements. The introductions complete, everyone took their positions around the central table. Valar activated the holographic display showing the Voidborn fleet now orbiting the remains of the diplomatic station. "They are consolidating their position," he explained. "In our history, their first attack came against an isolated human colony. We had believed that was their first contact with our species. Now I understand they found you earlier but were initially cautious, studying from afar." Our arrival forced their hand. Admiral Foster leaned forward. "How exactly do these Voidborn phase between dimensions, and more importantly, how do we fight them?" Valar manipulated the display showing detailed scans of a Voidborn vessel. Their ships generate a field that allows them to exist partially outside normal space-time, he explained. This makes conventional weapons largely ineffective as the energy simply passes through them. He brought up another image showing what appeared to be modifications to standard weapon systems. "In our timeline, you developed phase shift modulators for your weapons. These devices synchronized your attacks with the Voidborn phase state, allowing you to affect them. We can provide the basic designs, though your current technology will limit their effectiveness." Krazak, the Zelnar commander, spoke, his translator, converting his clicks and hisses to English. How convenient that you appear with exactly the technology we need. Is it not equally possible that you are the true threat using these Voidborn as a distraction while you infiltrate our command structure? Velar met the commander's gaze without flinching. I understand your suspicion. It is the same caution that allowed the Zelnar to survive as a species for so long. But consider the tactical reality. We could have conquered both your peoples without warning, had that been our intention. Our technology is centuries beyond yours. Susan intervened. The Voidborn have already destroyed a station and killed both humans and Zelnar. Whatever Velar's true motives, he has provided us with potential defenses. We should at least consider them. Admiral Foster nodded. We can implement these modifications on a small number of ships as a test. If they prove effective, we can expand to the full fleet. The discussion continued as they planned their strategy. The Nexus data suggested the Voidborn would target populated worlds, next likely beginning with the nearest human colony on Proxima Centauri. Their fleet would need to intercept them there. As the meeting concluded, Susan noticed Kate Adams waiting outside the chamber. The xenobiologist appeared excited, her eyes bright with discovery. You need to see this, Kate said, leading Susan to a laboratory where several Nexus scientists worked. The tests confirm it. Their DNA shows markers from both human and Zelnar genetic code. The fusion appears stable, suggesting generations of interbreeding. They are exactly what they claim to be. Susan processed this information. The implications were staggering, not just for the current crisis, but for the future relationship between humans and Zelnar. Have you shared this with Krazak? She asked. Kate shook her head. Not yet. I wanted you to see it first. Susan found Krazak in the observation lounge staring out at the assembled fleet. The Zelnar warrior stood perfectly still, only the slight movement of her tail indicating her thoughts were active. Krazak turned as Susan approached. I have been thinking about what these Nexus beings represent, she said. Their existence suggests our peoples not only form an alliance, but eventually become one people. The Zelnar have always remained separate, believing our genetic superiority would be diluted by mixing with other species. Susan moved to stand beside her. The evidence suggests that instead of dilution, your people gained new strengths through the combination. Perhaps that is why the Voidborn fear us, the potential of what we might become together. Krazak considered this. Her four eyes blinked in the Zelnar expression of thoughtful consideration. A curious perspective. She admitted, the Council will not easily accept such a future. They were interrupted by an alarm klaxon. Velar's voice came through the ship's communication system. The Voidborn fleet has changed course. They are moving toward Earth at high speed. All personnel to battle stations. The ship burst into activity as everyone rushed to their positions. Susan and Krazak hurried to the bridge where Valar Admiral Foster and Commander Grazak were already reviewing tactical displays. The Voidborn have bypassed the colony, said Valar, his expression grim. They go directly for your homeworld. This did not happen in our timeline. Susan felt a cold dread. They must have detected your temporal signature, realized the future you represent, and decided to eliminate the threat at its source. Valar nodded. Our arrival has changed things. They seek to cut off the alliance before it can truly form. By attacking Earth, they hope to cripple humanity and prevent the united force that eventually defeats them. Admiral Foster turned to Grazak. Commander, if Earth falls, humanity will be severely weakened. The Voidborn will target Zelnar Prime next. We must stand together. The Zelnar commander stood tall, his posture rigid with formal dignity. The Zelnar Empire has never aided another species in battle, he said. Then his posture softened. But neither have we faced an enemy who exists between dimensions. Today, we make history. Send word to all vessels. The combined fleet will defend Earth. The Nexus ships joined with the human Zelnar fleet as they pursued the Voidborn toward Earth. Valar provided the phase shift technology, allowing the fleet to travel at unprecedented speed. Still, the Voidborn had a head start. The race to save Earth had begun in the weapons. Lab Nexus engineers worked alongside human and Zelnar technicians, modifying weapon systems with the phase shift technology. The process was complicated, requiring both advanced theoretical understanding and practical adjustments. Susan watched as the first modified weapons were tested against simulated void-born shields. The results were promising, though not perfect. The phase shift allowed approximately 60% weapons penetration, a significant improvement over the zero effect of standard weapons. Krazak joined her, observing the tests. Not perfect, she noted, but perhaps enough to slow them until we can develop better solutions. Susan nodded. Humanity has often survived on just enough as Earth came into view on the long-range sensors. The bridge fell silent. The blue-green planet looked peaceful from a distance, unaware of the approaching threat. The void-born fleet had already entered the outer solar system. Their black ships, a stark contrast against the star's Admiral Foster, addressed the combined fleet. "This is Admiral Foster to all vessels. The enemy approaches Earth with technology beyond our current understanding, but not beyond our courage. Together we stand not just for our own peoples, but for all who will come. After we fight not only for today, but for tomorrow, prepare for battle."